Hello and thanks for joining us to our viewers here in Korea and around the world. It's 10 p.m. on Saturday, April 26th. Here in Seoul, I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned into our ongoing coverage of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. It is now very late into the 11th day of search operations at the accident site. The pace of recovering bodies from the ferry has slowed as the authorities and divers struggle amid difficult weather conditions and powerful currents. For the latest, we are going to connect to our Song Ji-sun at Pengmokhang Harbour, the nearest point of land to where the ferry went down. Ji-sun.
Mark, it was a very slow day in terms of search and recovery operation, and the rain started to rain here, and the tides, winds, and the waves are getting stronger. Rescuers can only get into the water at certain times of the day when the currents weakens a little, and the next time window opens after midnight. 2 female students of Danwon High School were recovered earlier in the day, and the confirmed death toll now stands at 187, with 115 still remain missing. Divers are focusing their search on the 4th floor of the ferry, as this is where the cabins of most of the high school students were located. But it is getting tougher and tougher to recover bodies compared to previous days. 1, because of the strong currents that are getting stronger by the day, and 2, because of the debris within the ferry, like broken furniture and cargo. The divers are now expanding their search areas on the left side of the ferry, which is now laying on the seabed, further reducing the amount of time they can spend underwater, as it's more than 40 meters below surface. Considering the time needed to decompress on the way back to the surface, with higher pressure in the deeper water, they can only search for a maximum of 10 minutes under the water.
And Ji-sun, everyone was hoping the bodies of the victims would have been recovered quicker as new equipment was to be deployed, but we hear that didn't happen.
That's right, a diving bell, a chamber that could be used as a base and transportation for divers underwater, has arrived at the accident site Friday, but could not be deployed because of poor conditions and returned to port earlier today. And the equipment was expected to help boost the number of divers taking part in the search operations and enable them to stay underwater longer without having to come up to surface too often. Employing the new equipment was part of the parents' request to speed up the search efforts, but it's unclear at the moment when the diving bell might be deployed, as the conditions are expected to worsen over the next few days.
All Marine and Navy divers must pull out of the water to install guidelines for the diving bell, but it's hard to do so as they are already operating on an around-the-clock schedule. The equipment can be deployed whenever the conditions improve and when private and military divers coordinate their operation schedules.
More civilian divers have also been brought back in as the parents requested earlier. But at this moment, neither the military or private divers are able to continue the operation due to the high tide and strong currents. To give you an idea, the current is moving at more than 2 meters per second. That means divers working underwater can drift more than 150 meters in just 1 minute. This has also raised worries bodies might have flown out of the sunken ferry. Because of this, authorities have increased the number of boats searching the waters and also expanded the radius by 60 kilometers. This has been Song Ji-sun reporting live from Pengmokhang Harbour in Sindu.
Now, almost 100,000 people have visited a temporary group memorial altar set up in Ansan, the city most touched by this tragedy, as more than 300 students from a high school there were on board the ill-fated ferry. We now go over to our Kwon, who is at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall. So, it's the weekend now, so I'm sure many more people have paid their respects today.
Yes, Mark, I have been here since the morning, and the city was and is still full of Ansan citizens, as well as people from all across the country, mainly dressed in black, who are coming into the memorial hall to say their goodbyes to the victims of the tragic Sewol-ho ferry accident. Now, even late at this hour, hundreds of people are standing in several lines that stretch out into the streets near the hall to pay their respects to the now 118 students and teachers of Danwon High School, whose pictures are displayed here, in front of which the mourners laid down white flowers. Now, well over 100,000 people have visited the memorial so far since it opened last Wednesday, and some say they have come more than once. And around 70,000 text messages of condolences have been sent, which are being displayed on one of the screens here. Now, on a message board also inside the hall, one of the words most used is sorry. Sorry for not being able to save you. Sorry, we as adults made a mistake. Now, the atmospheres are very different depending on where you are. In front of the hall, everyone just waits in silence. Now, once they come out after paying their condolences, most of them have tears in their eyes.
I hope the victims rest in peace, and I hope the families will find solace and that the missing are found.
My eyes were full of tears, and it hurt so much that I couldn't just stay at home. That's why I came here.
Yes, so our thoughts are with the families, friends and classmates of all those victims. And if anyone watching wants to go and pay tribute at the altar, how late will it stay open tonight?
Well, the temporary group memorial altar will be open to the public until Monday for 24 hours a day here at the Olympic Memorial Hall, except for a few times throughout the day due to maintenance purposes. Now, with the rising number of mourners, shuttle bus schedules in the area have been extended by 2 hours and are now running from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. The nearest subway station is Gojan Station, and there are buses that run from there. Many taxi drivers in the area are taking customers on free rides to the hall as well.
When the students take taxis in the morning to go to school in groups of 3 or 4, I think it could be the students that are affected. I also have colleagues whose children were among the identified students.
Now, by Tuesday, an official memorial altar is expected to be ready at Arirang Park, also in the city of Ansan, which is around 10 minutes away by car from the Olympic Hall here and 5 minutes from Korea University Ansan Hospital. Now, that's all I have for now. This has been Kwon reporting live from the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall.
Thank you, Soa. And it's not just those of us here in Korea who are mourning the loss of so many young souls. Over in the United States, movements to commemorate the victims are growing. In front of the Korean consulate in Los Angeles, some 50 Korean-American university students have set up a small memorial altar where people can come to pay their respects and other words of support. People from all walks of life have come to attach the yellow ribbons and to hold candle-lit vigils. Messages on the cards read that miracles can happen and that they share in the deep sadness felt by the families. Now, for all the attention given to the captain and the crew of the Sewol-ho ferry, who appear to have abandoned the ship when hundreds of passengers, mostly teenagers, were still on board, despite this, there are countless other stories of heroism in this accident, stories of people sacrificing their own lives so that others might live. Kim Yeon-bin has this report.
Ferry attendant Park Ji-young lost her life trying to save high school students who were on board the Sewol-ho ferry. Chung Cha-woon gave his life vest to a friend and returned to the capsizing ferry to save others. He was not able to save himself. 2 teachers, Nam Yoon-chul and Choi Hae-jung, didn't think twice about throwing themselves into the frigid waters to save their students. The last phone message left by ferry attendant leader Yang Dae-hong said that he had to go save students. He never returned. The heroic sacrifices made by these individuals and the others aboard the Sewol-ho serve as an inspiration in an otherwise dark time.
I'm touched by the student my age who gave up his life vest and sacrificed his life to save others.
There are people that care more about others than themselves. Their sacrifices are very touching.
There are movements online to designate these people as heroes, as good Samaritans, and martyrs, so their families can receive special benefits from the government. Their bodies would also be eligible for burial in the National Cemetery. More than 50,000 people have signed an online petition recommending ferry attendant Park Ji-young for that honor. Che Do-ka will also likely receive the recognition. The high school student made the first call to emergency services and is credited with saving the 174 survivors.
Even though he is gone, I am proud of my son. So proud.
It's a sentiment shared by every Korean. Pride in these people and their acts of heroism, mixed with sadness, in that day, along with so many others, so tragically lost their lives. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The unbearable wait goes on for the families of the 115 people who remain unaccounted for. They've been huddled up at a gymnasium near the accident site for well over 1 week now. And as much as this wait is taking a toll on their physical health, there are great concerns about their mental stability. For more on this and other updates from on site, let's go live to our Connie Lee right now. Connie.
Hey Mark, well it has been 11 straight days of waiting for the family members you see behind me on the gym floor. And like you said, them just practically being on standby 24 hours a day is definitely taking a toll on their physical, mental, and emotional being. I talked to doctors earlier today and apparently they are in high stress and the number of patients with colds or flus has increased since last weekend. Now they are being treated properly, but a major concern now is the mental health of these family members. Doctors say that more patients are suffering from major headaches and chest pains, and some of them complain that they have trouble breathing. Health officials are telling me that these are all physical symptoms resulting from emotional and mental stress. I talked to one doctor here who is a mental, body, and medicine doctor, or someone who can treat a patient's physical and mental being. Now, in her words, this latest tragedy is the worst for the health of those directly involved.
This latest disaster is unique and really is one of the worst-case scenarios for people's health. Not only were a massive number of people killed, but most of those killed were children, and their deaths were caused by human error. So this kind of pain being felt by the parents is huge and will have a significant impact on their mental health. Unfortunately, though, they are not taking the initiative to take care of their mental state.
Now, doctors say that the family members, especially the parents of the young passengers, do not think it's priority to take care of their own health when their child is dead. There's also the stigma of mental health problems here in Korea, with not many people being aware of mental health issues and disregarding them. Now, there are doctors here around the clock and also around 30 to 40 counselors and psychiatrists here at the Chindo Auditorium. And every time a family receives word that their loved one is confirmed dead, there's always a counselor that checks up on them. Now, there is a system here, but health officials worry about the mental health situation with the family members after they leave the shelter and return to their daily lives.
Well, Connie, we can only imagine the numbness and anguish those poor parents are feeling. The mood must be extremely heavy and worsening with every passing hour.
Right, Mark. Well, as Chizan reported earlier, the weather conditions has worsened this evening, so further diminishing the hopes that more bodies will be retrieved today. Now, outside the Chindo Auditorium, certain preparations were made for the bad weather for this weekend. Now, there are dozens of tents outside to provide people with food and other daily needs, and this afternoon, officials did put up plastic covers. The weather, though, is not stopping families from traveling to the sunken ferry site. Family members who are just restless here in the auditorium are making trips to Pimokong Harbor, which is the closest area to the ferry sunken site. Now, that area is about 40 minutes from the Chindo Auditorium, and there is a shuttle bus that brings people back and forth throughout the day. Now, I hear family members say that if they can, they want to pull out their loved ones out of the water themselves. Reporting live from the Chindo Auditorium, this has been Connie Lee.
And the investigation into finding out what caused this tragic accident and who's responsible continues as well. All 15 crew members involved in the navigation of the Sewol-ho ferry are now in custody and they face negligence charges. Now, let's go over to our Na Hyung-kyung at the news center for the latest in regards to the legal side of things.
Mark, prosecutors and the police are jointly investigating this case, as you know. And just a couple of hours ago, they raided the Maritime Traffic Control Center in Chindo. And investigators suspect officers at the Chindo Control Center were neglecting their duties. They were criticized for not being aware of the seriousness of the situation at the time of the accident. The investigation team will reportedly focus on finding out whether and why officials were not monitoring the area they were responsible for closely enough. And earlier in the day, several offices of an accounting firm that worked for the ferry operator Cheongjin Marine Company were raided as well. The accounting firm is known to have worked very closely not only with the ferry operator but also with its affiliated firms that are practically controlled by Yoo Byung-on, whose two sons are the biggest shareholders of the ferry operator's holding company. Prosecutors believe the accounting firm helped the use companies forge audit reports.
And Hyung-kyung, in light of this awful disaster, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries has decided to require passenger ships to install naval black boxes.
Yes, that is correct. They are called VDRs or voyage data recorders. Now they, as you can imagine, record various data including the ship's communications, speeds and course changes, all of which can be used to determine the cause should a vessel capsize. The United Nations International Maritime Organization mandates all international cargo ships and ferries over 3,000 tons to have VDRs, but the nearly 7,000-ton Sewol-ho ferry made only domestic trips, meaning those international guidelines did not apply. Korea's Maritime Ministry, however, says it plans on requiring the nation's cruise ships to also be equipped with black boxes. The new regulation, which the ministry plans to have set up by the end of this year, will start to be enforced on newly built cruise vessels first.
Well, it's good to hear that they are expanding safety regulations at least, and officials are widening the scope of their probe. They've been looking into irregularities in the country's overall port operation business.
Officials at the Korea Shipping Association are suspected to have been giving valuables, possibly including cash, to authorities at the Maritime Ministry and to Coast Guard officials as well. The association has been under fire lately for not keeping ferry operators on their toes about abiding by sailing and safety regulations, for example, loosely checking cargo loads and the conditions of life-saving equipment on the vessels. The board president of the association, Chu Sung-ho, offered his resignation on this Saturday, a day after another official, the chairman of the Korean Register of Shipping, Chun Young-gi, offered to step down. Mark?
Thank you, Hyung-kyung, and do keep us updated throughout the weekend. Now, in other news, another American citizen finds himself detained in North Korea. North Korean state media announced on Friday that it was holding a U.S. tourist in custody after he displayed what they call rash behavior upon entering Pyongyang. The announcement came on the first day of U.S. President Barack Obama's two-day visit to Seoul. Our Hwang Sang-hee tells us what this could mean.
North Korea said Friday it has detained an American tourist for rash behavior while passing through immigration. The state-run Korean Central News Agency said 24-year-old Matthew Todd Miller was placed in custody on April 10th after he tore up his visa upon entry, asking for asylum. The North said authorities are currently investigating the case. The announcement came amid U.S. President Barack Obama's two-day visit to South Korea. Following talks with President Park Geun-hye Friday, Obama said the United States stands shoulder to shoulder with South Korea against North Korean provocations. The U.S. State Department said it was in touch with the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang on Miller's detainment.
We have been in touch with the embassy of Sweden about these reports. As you know, Sweden is our protecting power in North Korea.
North Korea is also currently holding another U.S. citizen, Kenneth Bae. He was arrested in November 2012 and was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor on charges of seeking to topple the North Korean regime. U.S. efforts to release Bae have so far been unsuccessful, and Washington once again called on Pyongyang to free the American prisoner.
We continue to urge North Korean authorities to grant Mr. Bae special amnesty and immediate release on humanitarian grounds.
Experts say North Korea likely waited for President Obama's South Korea visit to announce the detainment of another American citizen. The isolated state is believed to be using the 2 U.S. detainees as a bargaining chip for dialogue. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, on the final day of his 2-day stay here in Korea, U.S. President Barack Obama met with members of the Korean corporate community and vowed to support them in their business pursuits in the United States. The U.S. leader also made a trip with Korean President Park Geun-hye to their combined forces headquarters. Chae Yu-sun reports.
U.S. President Barack Obama promised Korean business leaders in Seoul on Saturday that he will actively help them invest more in his country. On his second day in Korea, President Obama said now that Seoul and Washington have agreed to simplify the certification process for the origin of their trade goods according to their bilateral FTA, he is ready to support investments. A day earlier, Seoul and Washington are known to have agreed to minimizing the process. Obama added the two sides still need to seek fair competition in the areas of automobiles, intellectual property, and organic foods. The U.S. president then talked about Seoul's possible membership into the Washington-led Regional Trade Pact involving 12 countries.
And given South Korea's interest in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, fully implementing KORUS also is the single most important step that South Korea can take now to show it's prepared to eventually meet the high standards of TPP.
Before wrapping up his 2-day trip, President Obama visited the U.S. and South Korea's Combined Forces Command with President Park Geun-hye. It was the first time the two countries' leaders visited the command headquarters together. After being briefed on the two allies' joint defense posture from the head of the Combined Forces Command, General Curtis Scaparrotti, Presidents Park and Obama said they will respond firmly should North Korea provoke again. Pyongyang has recently threatened to conduct what it called a new form of nuclear test. Following their summit Friday, the two leaders said they will not accept further provocations by the North and that additional sanctions will follow such behavior. The next stop on President Obama's four-nation Asia tour is Malaysia. Chae Yu-sun, Arirang News.
A local prosecutor in Japan has given Korea a victory in a case involving the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island. Japan's Kyodo news agency reports that the Masue District Prosecutor's Office dropped a case logged by a group of Japanese politicians after Korean lawmakers visited Dokdo in August of last year. The chief prosecutor in the case said the individuals cannot be punished for illegal entry to Dokdo, as the Japanese lawmakers had claimed, because the island is controlled by Korea. Japanese political groups had also charged former Korean President Lee Myung-bak and President Park Geun-hye, before she came into office, with illegal entry for past visits to Dokdo, but those cases were also dropped. Now, taking a brief look at your weekend weather, rain and gusty wind is in the forecast down on Jindo Island tonight. Currents around the Sewol-ho ferry accident site will also be strong, and this is going to hamper search efforts. Poor weather conditions are unfortunately expected through Tuesday. For Seoul and the surrounding region, rain is in the forecast from later tonight, and Sunday will feel a lot cooler than today, with the daytime high only reaching 15 degrees Celsius. Now let's get a quick check on the weather conditions wherever you are around the world. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. For all the latest updates on the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, you can go to our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news. Until then, goodbye.